All right, everybody, we're live back again here with another episode from the team Philo. Welcome, Mahadin. Welcome, Kelly. How are you two doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good, Kelly.
All good on my side. How you doing?
Good, good. So, all right, audience. So, what happened probably about 2 days back or so? I went to a channel called DawahWise, and they are a Dawa channel, and there are a couple of guys, but chiefly I think they have two, Hashim and Mansur. And I had kind of a decent discussion, you can say probably. But then what we wanted to do was to review that discussion and how they kind of don't let you talk and all this the kind of arguments they presented. So I thought maybe it's a good idea to have it analyzed with Martin and Kali. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump in straight into that analysis and see what's happening over there. All right, guys. So while I present the screen, if you guys want to say anything, please go ahead.
Or like or subscribe,
Forgot who Philo is.
All right, as Kelly said, like, subscribe, share, and press the notification bell. A comment after the stream is over, right? So far, I don't see anybody has joined the stream. Now there is somebody in the stream. But what we're gonna do is, okay, so I'm gonna give you just a brief thing. Basically, I went over there. I have been to a couple of their streams, these Dawa parties of UK, basically, and these guys are active in Speakers Corner as well. And last time I was on a channel called Muslim Cowboy, and the gentleman's name is Brendan, basically. And so I spoke to a couple of guys over there, and I was talking about the preservation of the Quran and those things. So on that kind of assurance, I went to this stream because in their streams you have to show your faces. I didn't want to show my faces, but Mohammed, one of their co-hosts on this channel, assured me that you won't have to show because the conversations were really cordial conversations. So I went over there, and this is how the exchange happened. The question that I wanted to ask over here was basically what would have to happen for these guys to lower their confidence from 100% to just a tiny bit, basically, because most of these guys proclaim that they are absolutely sure that Islam is true, basically, in their eyes. There's no Allah, the existence of Allah is absolutely true, and Islam is absolutely true. And my question was very simple, basically. And so what we're gonna do is jump straight in, right?
He said he spoke to you guys.
all right.
Oh, Brad, that's fine.
That here we go.
Your background, what's your
Okay, then about Islam. I'm a soft.
you that
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so-
All right. So here a few things happened. They asked me about where I stood in terms of my worldview. I told them that I'm an atheist, but I called myself soft atheist, basically saying that from a belief perspective, I'm an atheist, but you can say that from a knowledge perspective, I might be an agnostic. Basically, I don't have a claim that God does not exist, but I'm probably just saying that same thing that Matt Delanty and all the other guys say, basically. And this agnostic atheist label kind of has become, a little bit more in fashion, basically, on vogue, pretty much, right?
Yeah, it's still a bit out
So,
of fashion for Muslim dawa. What do you call it? The Muslim dawa gang would be a bit more aggressive. But
yeah,
the
I'm
people,
not saying Dawa gang. Basically, yeah, I'm in
let's not say that.
these
But I
Dawa
mean,
guys. I can
these
say for
apologists. Let's
Dawa
call it
fellas,
Muslim apologists. So
right?
all these majority of the Muslim apologists, I think they totally sort of ignore this particular way of defining an atheist, right? An atheist agnostic. And often when you say, particularly in the Urdu Hindi dawa scene, over there, if you use the word atheist agnostic, they'll often you know say that you're confused. You're either an atheist or an agnostic. They're not aware of this this metrics structure where a person is agnostic in terms of the knowledge claim, and an atheist in terms of belief about God. So if they were they able to understand that label that you use for yourself?
I think,
You
yeah, I
say
mean, and,
they didn't argue
Hashim
about
later
that too
on,
much, right?
yeah, Hashim later on said that, so basically you're an agnostic. And I said, okay, let's say this, yeah,
Yeah,
let's go on with that, basically, right?
exactly.
And so,
There's
yeah,
no
I mean,
point
this
in
is,
going into a long discussion about the semantics about what you are. Just I think it's better just say this is my belief. I
I
don't
told
assert
him that
any.
he can.
Yeah.
So sorry, Kelly, go ahead. I interrupted you.
No. Yes. You can say.
Yeah, I
Go
mean,
ahead.
basically, that's what I told him, that, okay, I mean, this is, let's not get into whatever label you want to put on me. Basically, you can put it in agnostic, atheist, whatever, you know.
22.
All right.
So if you don't reject God entirely, then
So
you would be an
belief
agnostic.
wise,
Okay, fine.
uh,
That's true.
maybe as a question, what would maybe him was also, and I think probably I asked the same question to Brandon as well, Brandon and Mohammed as well, maybe also there. So I've spoken to.
You are saying you're going to ask the same.
I can't remember Brendan probably. So for you,
All right.
what
Here's the question. I skipped a little bit. In the meanwhile, there were a few conversations going on, so I just skipped that part. And
Yeah.
here's the question that I went over there and asked.
would have to happen? My question is exactly what would have to happen for you, and correct me if I'm wrong in my assumptions, right? What would have to happen for you to lower your confidence that certain supreme deity exists? Let's say I'm supposing here your confidence is almost 100% that it does, right? And Islam is the haq, very much, right? Is probably your understanding, right?
That depends on your understanding of existence. Do you believe in existence?
All right. So right off the bat,
Yeah.
there's a
There's a
counter
problem,
question, basically.
and it's irrelevant. Why does your worldview matter? Okay, so there you go. Mahadan is away. Why does your worldview actually matter in about why does he
Answering this
want to know
question.
your
Yeah.
worldview to answer your question? Because your question is about their worldview, not your own. So right from the get-go, he's being he put that counter question for no reason at all. I don't see any reason for that question.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, uh, it's a problem, basically, right? I mean, it's a counter question. Why does it matter, basically? And okay, it seems like that Mahadin is having some serious trouble, so we're gonna add the third wheel, and I'm gonna post the link for Ugba. And Ugba, if you're present, please come on in. And we what we have decided is we should have three hosts pretty much at any time, for most of the streams. So now, since Madan is not here, you can join in, basically, if you're there and interested in joining. So please come on in. And I'll just add that this okay, already Ugba is already here. Ugba,
Hi
welcome.
guys,
How are you doing, man?
I'm fine. How are you guys?
Yeah.
Good,
Welcome.
good.
Ukko.
Yeah, it's sad that Mahadin is
All right.
having issues, but it is what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah,
What can he?
I think he would have just ripped apart these arguments, but yeah, we're good. I think we're gonna go ahead, and if he joins back in later on, so we'll be four then. Yeah, so no worries. I'll just type in, guys. Anything you have to say for that first thing? Ugba, let me ask you one thing. What would you call yourself when you go to one of those streams?
I think I will be careful with these guys because these are not the type of guys that you would want to introduce yourself as a naturalist or a philosophical atheist for sense for. Because, for example, if I introduce myself as a naturalist, then they'll directly hatch on to evolution and get my perspectives on the origin of life and the issues that I want to talk to will not be talked about. So
Right. So your whole purpose of going to their stream will be just
yes,
jeopardized
so
pretty
it will be
much.
better if I,
And
as you did, you introduce yourself as an agnostic atheist, and that is a better position to take in front of these guys.
right. But
Yeah,
what do you consider yourself in reality? Agnostic
yeah, that
atheist
is the
or
question. That is the
naturalist?
question.
Yeah,
Uh,
naturalist.
I Yeah, I'm an agnostic atheist. Basically, I'm agnostic about the causal nature of our reality. I don't know what is the cause of a universe, for example. It may be a deistic
Fair
god,
enough.
it may be a naturalistic entity, but for most of the part, I'm a naturalist. I believe that things have natural explanations.
So you're an
Are
you're
you a
in Marvin's camp pretty much.
methodological? Are you a methodological naturalist or a what you call an what is it? Epistemological naturalist
Naturalist.
or philosophical? Is it what is it? Philosophical
Yeah,
naturalist.
I would align
Are you a
myself with
philosophical
philosophical
naturalist?
naturalism.
Okay. And we don't. I think we should not go into that domain right now, but we can talk about that philosophical naturalism as well. But once
See,
again, you're
I
right
mean,
that I am an agnostic atheist, so I don't have any problem. I don't have to say anything different when I go on any such stream. But the only problem, why am I talking about this, or why did we even say that? Not to start by calling yourself a naturalist is because that would be unnecessary. That would not be even their question, right? So you would only talk about your position about theism or God or religion, right? That would be relevant. Talk about them as a start, and if you want to talk about naturalism and all such topics, then fine, you can start with that. Otherwise, you are giving them something which they'll not let go of, and they'll talk about it. And since there are usually three people, and it's fine, of course, whenever it's our stream, we have three people. But since they have three people, they are going to talk about that topic. Each one of them will have one or two questions, and they'll have their own
Yeah,
discussion points and
they'll
arguments, and
basically
you'll
use
not
it
be
to
able.
avoid justification.
Yeah, you'll
I
not be
think the
able
whole
to
topic
actually.
whole topic will be derailed pretty much, right?
Exactly.
I
You'll
mean,
not be able to talk about the topic that you had in mind. You'll not be able to do that. So that is the only point that I want to mention. Okay. But I think,
and
yeah, yes.
sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
No, no, fine. You can go ahead.
No, what I wanted to say is that it is not required of us to be 100% sure in what we believe, basically, because our position is not 100%. Yeah, we are not absolutely sure. They are the ones who are absolutely sure, right? So
Yeah.
even if I say today that I'm an agnostic and tomorrow I go and I say I'm a naturalist or an atheist or agnostic atheist or whatever, my position is not 100% grounded, right? I mean, I can always say that, okay, I'm not really there. I'm still, searching. I'm still examining my options, and this is where I am as of now. But it might change pretty much, right? But their position is already they. If you ask them, and that's exactly the point of my question was that if you ask them that what would budge you from your position, and their answer is going to be always no. There's nothing that can budge their position pretty much, right? I mean, you'll have to really probe hard for half an hour or an hour for them to come up with something like, okay, if you show that a Quranic challenge cannot be met and these are the certain parameters, and unless until these parameters are met, we won't budge. And even then we probably won't, because there is always something that why or contradictions or inconsistencies, it's something wrong in our understanding. There's no inconsistency in the Quran. That's our belief, that's our akida pretty much, right? And that was exactly the point of my going over there and asking that question. I've asked the same question to Mufti Wajdi Saab as well, and he waffled for a bit, and then he gave some different answer, even though beforehand in a few streams he had agreed that the strongest arguments that we Muslims have are kalam cosmological argument and the contingency argument. And now it seems like he has moved away from that. He has shifted his in a sense like goalpost from that to now he thinks that ontological argument is probably the I mean, it's perfectly fine to change, your what arguments you. But once you lose kind of in some arguments that you thought were the strongest of your arguments, you have to be at least humble and honest enough and intellectually honest enough to say that, okay, yeah, maybe my position is not all that tenable. Maybe there are something. Maybe I lowered my confidence by just a tiny bit. Now I'm not absolutely sure. I'm not 100% sure. All right. Yeah, I think that's my monologue for today. Sorry to bore everybody with that.
No,
Shall we
no
move on,
problem.
guys?
Yeah, let's move on.
Existence of us
Do you want to
humans,
speed it up a bit?
or
Everything, the universe, for example.
Kelly, I'm running it at 1.25. You want
Great. Okay. No, fine.
up it by
Then it's
1.5?
fine. Try it out. Let's see if there's any problem. Then we can slow it down. Otherwise, let's try it 1.5.
I think I take it as an axiomatic truth, pretty much.
Okay, so where did it come from, the universe?
I think the best answer, in my opinion, from my perspective, would be I don't know.
That's not an answer. That's an appeal to ignorance.
No, that's
All right, guys. Anybody can give me a definition of appeal to ignorance?
Yeah, appeal to ignorance is when we don't know of something, and therefore we invoke the explanation that we want to invoke. For example, if we don't know what caused the universe, therefore God. This is actually appeal to ignorance, and this is actually employed by
Yeah,
theists.
this is so simple. I mean, so simple, right? Why don't these guys understand? I mean,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
look at his face,
you.
how confidently he's saying that it's an appeal to ignorance.
He
I
just
just really
memorized.
understand.
Yeah, he just memorized that fallacy, that appeal to ignorance. He didn't actually wasn't able to understand what it means. That appeal to ignorance only is relevant when you're actually making a claim, right? So
Right.
you say that you are making a claim, but you're appealing to ignorance. Isn't that right?
Right. I mean, he probably should have said, okay, you don't know. Basically, you don't know. Maybe there are things that probably, okay, that's one of the answers. But we have this reason to believe what we believe, and we have our own methodology to but
Exactly.
appeal to
I mean,
ignorance. Where does that come from? Pretty much,
exactly. I mean, otherwise, any person who says I don't know about something is appealing to ignorance. No,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not like every person who doesn't know about a specific topic or a specific subject is appealing to ignorance. He's not appealing to
Exactly.
ignorance. He's just being humble enough to actually admit that he doesn't know about a certain topic or
Yeah, and
subject.
And
I think
this
these guys,
is not a simple. Sorry, Ugba, please go
yeah,
ahead.
these guys do this all the time. For example, when talked about what is the meaning of God's hands, and they will say that we don't know. It's nothing like the creation, but we affirm that He has two hands. So
Not
you are so
not only
would you say
that,
that you are appealing to ignorance?
exactly. Not only that, God can enter creation. We don't know how, but somehow He can, even according to
Yes.
Islam. And they appeal to mystery in that regard. They are fine with that. But somehow when you say that I don't know where the universe came from, they are immediately, it's something problematic for them, and they cannot accept that answer because it is appeal to mystery, appeal to ignorance. You know?
Yes, exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean, and it's not a simple question, right? Basically, it's not like somebody's asking what is 2 + 2, right? And you say,
Exactly.
you give an answer, and it's kind of an appeal to ignorance. But these are very tough questions, right? You don't. I mean, they think that they have the answers to these questions, but they don't. I mean, they are making up their, answers. Basically, they are the ones who are appealing to ignorance, pretty much, right? It's their side that's appealing to ignorance, pretty much, right?
Yes, because they are basing their claim upon it.
Right, they are basing their claim pretty much on it, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I was really shocked to hear that. But anyways, let's move on.
I'm not
that's
shocked.
the best answer.
I'm not shocked to hear it from them.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
somebody in one of the comment section said something like that, but I'm not gonna repeat it over here. But you understand the point. I
Yeah,
was gonna make it. Probably you've read those comments as well, right?
yeah.
So let's move on there.
Let's move on.
Best answer, I think, because
I'll tell you why it's not an answer. Imagine you go to an examination and there are, let's say, 10 questions on your exam paper. For every one of them, you answer, I don't know. Would you expect to fail or a pass?
No, you're giving a wrong analogy here,
Why?
basically. And the reason I'll tell you, because
Okay.
exam is people read the exam books and all those things beforehand, right? And those exams are something about that already. You have been taught by your teachers or through books and stuff like that, right? So you're doing a kind of a very wrong analogy here.
No, it's not, because some
Yeah,
students
it
know
is.
the
It is
answer.
completely.
I'll tell you why.
I think this is the same thing. I think we have already told why appeal to ignorance doesn't fit here, right? I mean, and
Irrelevant.
is
Yeah, I
irrelevant.
mean,
And now, on top of that,
simple
he's giving an
comment on this.
analogy,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
making his case even worse, basically, right? I just
Yeah.
can't.
These Dawa people are so bad at using analogies. I mean, I have never seen them using an analogy which actually applies to the situation that they're trying to apply to.
Right, right. Ugba, you wanted to
So,
say something?
simple comment from me: completely relevant analogy and completely relevant example doesn't apply to your case at all.
Yeah, I would just say that your answer was absolutely on point. That this is about background knowledge. The students who are giving exams have background knowledge that their teachers have taught that topic to them, even if they have not attended that class. But it's not the case for example, the explanation for the universe. We don't have any background knowledge whatsoever about what could the explanation for universe's existence be. So the analogy is completely false.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, this is like so. We keep running on this analogy, and then after that, I think Mansur jumps in, and he just
Yeah,
makes you feel as if you're. I think I won't run that part. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move ahead. Do you guys want me to run through it or
exactly.
just
No,
jump
no, no.
ahead?
Don't run everything, because it will be a waste of our time and the waste
Yeah.
of the time of our audience. Just go
What
to
I
the
wanted to do
relevant
was
parts
what I wanted to do was
where the
just
conversation
jump
actually
ahead
moves
and
on. Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to move, the conversation ahead. So what I'll do is I'll take us to 2.29 minutes, basically.
You talked about this for half an hour.
I think there were some different things,
Okay.
right? So
Okay.
what happened
But
in
slightly
between
different.
is, yeah, and
It's not that
I'll fill
important.
in.
Fine.
Yeah,
Fine.
I'll
I just
fill
want to
in
know
what.
if I just wanted to know it. They didn't talk about this analogy about ignorance for half an hour, right? Just wanted to know, or did they?
No, not
Okay.
yeah. I mean, there were a couple of different things. Basically, what
Okay.
happened after that was Mansur said Hashim is asking for where did the universe come into being, and I said a better terminology to use, and which is that the scientists nowadays use because after the Big Bang, and probably was more so popularized by Carl Sagan, that we can use if and there is a big if the multiverse hypothesis has some water to it or some weight to it, then there could be something else beyond this universe, and we can let's call that cosmos, right? And even though cosmos is is another name for universe, basically, right? But I said let's distinguish it because we don't know, even if let's suppose there was there's this universe, this local spread of the universe had some beginning. We don't know what laid beyond that,
Exactly.
basically, because all our language breaks down at that point pretty much. And so most of this conversation kind of revolved around that, basically. And so finally we
I
agreed
think
that
that might be a bit relevant to our discussion. If but wherever you feel it's the most relevant
okay,
parts are of the
let's see
discussion, you can actually. It's fine.
let's
I
see
mean, it's up to you.
let's try to
More reasonable to you out of these two options?
You have butterfly effects, right? Pretty much. And
No, but on what
butterfly effects
basis?
can
But
cause
wait. On what
El
basis
Ninos,
was?
La Ninas, and
Philo, is we're trying to look, bro. You have a channel dedicated to this. You think that you would appreciate having the opportunity to talk with like-minded people. We like these conversations, dude. We're not here to hit you with a baseball bat and say we're so much smarter than you, this, that, and the third, dude. We're literally encouraging you to think by coming, leveling with you in a topic that we really thoroughly enjoy talking about, dude.
yeah,
So
same here. I do agree. Same here.
great.
So why can't you give us a rational
Our point
answer?
is, oh, go ahead, brother.
No, I see. I mean, for things that I don't know, there's no, I can't make a guess and give you a rational
But you
answer.
did
Right?
already.
You
When
did that.
Mansur
That's what
asked
we're
you,
gonna show you.
Mansur asked you for possible.
all right, so I'm gonna fill in a little bit, right? And I think the part that I skipped kind of deliberately is they asked me, well, where did the universe come from? What is your best guess? What is the most reasonable answer you may have, right? Excuse me. And cheekily I said it could have been created by an ant or maybe an elephant or maybe maybe a unicorn, who knows, or it could have been eternal, right? And I gave these are the four possibilities, and I also told them that there are infinite many possibilities, right? And so yeah, I have to admit that there were problems in my answer as well. I mean I could have just given them, okay, there are only two
Yeah.
possibilities, these are binaries, 0 or 1, there is no other option, and that is either the universe is eternal or it has been created, right?
But it was by
And
created, you mean
I
it had
mean
a
created
cause.
as in it came into
It had a
existence
cause
somehow,
behind
whatever.
some.
Yeah,
It had some cause
yeah,
behind.
created as in by causal, with a causal,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly,
action, right?
exactly.
And which, I mean, at
I
least
think which
that's
would have been a bit better. It would have kept the topic
on
possibly,
course basically and
yeah,
shorter
on course.
probably. And
Exactly.
yeah, I do agree that that was a mistake on my part basically, because that would have saved both the parties probably 5-10 minutes maybe,
Exactly.
right?
And
Maybe more.
I think it's always, to be fair, whenever you are talking on a channel like this, uh, I'm not a debater. I think you are not a debater as well. So in these discussions, we can make mistakes in terms of not answering the best in the best way that we could, because in the hindsight we might think that, oh, that was not a good answer, but at that moment we might not have much time to think about it. So thinking on your feet, I'm not good at it at all. So such discussion might be actually a bit difficult. But I think what matters is actually what were the main arguments that we were making, or what you were trying to make.
Right, right. I totally agree, and that's exactly. I mean, that was one of my mistakes, to be honest, quite frankly. I mean, I did make that mistake. That okay, I could have just said, okay, there are these two options: either the universe has always existed, or it came into existence. Right? These are the only.
Right.
These are
Right.
mutually exclusive, options basically, and there's no third option. Right? And then within these two, and one more thing that then I could have added on top of this is that okay, these are the two options, but nobody dares to think that these have equal probabilities, right? Because uh, you don't have any idea about the probability distribution. I mean, we are
Exactly.
not even talking about the probability distribution, but let me use that terminology because our language breaks at a certain point talking about these things basically, because there's no space, there's no time. We can't use past tense, we can't use present tense, we can't use future tense describing these things. So the language has a complete breakdown talking about events which are not related with time or space, pretty much, right? Space time. So still we use the language that we know pretty much, and we try to communicate with that language, cause and effect, right? Because we don't even know whether cause and effect do really exist outside space time or outside of our universe or not, right? And what form that might have, what is eternal, has always existed, kind of words even mean for something that is metaphysically outside the physical world that we see, right? Pretty much. And physical material world is material world that encompasses space time as well along with it, right? So I should have been a little bit more careful in stating my case there. Madin, welcome back. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And hopefully this time for longer we'll be able to hear you.
Yeah, just give me 2 minutes. You guys keep talking. Just give me 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Not a problem. Not a problem. So yeah, and so what happened after that? After we went past, and yeah, and I was probably wrong in using ants and all those. But the reason why I used those examples that they could have created this universe. I said ant could have created. I said elephant could have created. I said unicorn could have created, or it was eternal. These were the four options I said, and I said there could be infinite many possibilities over here, which I'm not even aware of, and that's probably a fact, pretty much in a sense, because once you see that this universe could have been um, eternal, or have has always existed, from the other possibilities, it could have come about by any other means we probably don't have any idea about, right? And it could, and one of those options is probably it was created by a conscious mind, and which would include all the theistic gods, pretty much. You have the god of Islam, Allah, right? You have the god of Christianity, Yahweh. You have the god of Hindus, Brahma. You have god of Zoroastrians, Ahura Mazda, and you know what, right? So, but finally we cut down the chase, and Mansur said, okay, the universe, there are two options. Universe is eternal, or it came into existence at certain point, right? And whatever that may mean, point is whatever, right? And within the second option, you have three further options, basically sub options you can call, is it came from nothing, it created itself, and something created it, basically, right? And so that's we agreed, and at that point I did agree to him, and so he went on talking about each point from that point onwards. So I think that's where we are, pretty much at 129 probably. Shall we start from that point? So far we're good.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So I just gave a big background instead of just running the whole thing. I think you guys are okay, right, with that, or you still want to listen to it?
No, it's fine. I think you have already given us a summary of the discussion you had, so we can start from where you wanted to
our
start.
cosmos. Okay, this something that caused our universe must have the ability, must also have will. At least these two essential properties: will or a volition to bring about this universe. Have will. Okay, this something that caused our in infinite regress. You would come to a belief. All the possibilities, all the absurd, unbelievable.
Yeah, Callie and Ugba, I just wanted to add one more thing to this, is that the first two options, it came from nothing. And I said, yes, I mean, I agree. He gave an example of, Lawrence Krauss's book, Universe from Nothing. Have I read that? I said, no, I haven't read that book. And can something come from nothing? Absolutely nothing. And I said, I agreed. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, I wouldn't say it absolutely at that time. Probably I didn't say it, but I can't absolutely reject the idea that nothing can come from nothing. I mean, something can come from nothing, but I agreed that seems really absurd, and struck out the option A, that universe came.
And I think it's fair enough. We don't need to go into that discussion because we don't have any. We don't know anything about nothing, so it's fair enough. I think.
Let me just say something here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Nothing?
Yeah. I mean,
yes, we can hear.
In terms of nothing, you could say that even though you can't, like, we've done an entire stream on nothing, and that the idea that nothing is analytically contradictory, perhaps, right? In the sense that if it was truly nothing, then it should not have any laws or constraints or boundaries to prevent it from being nothing, and they'll be inherently unstable. And if it's truly nothing, and it's therefore inherently unstable, then it has infinite potentiality, right? So, in other words, when you try to imagine something is truly nothing, you're thinking that there are no, the laws of thermodynamics are not there. There are no laws whatsoever, and therefore, nothing is not something that can be contained as nothing, right? So nothing, therefore, devolves into being something that will be inherently unstable.
Nothing then has infinite potentiality, pretty much.
Yeah, but then if you say nothing is infinitely potential or something like that, then it doesn't sound like nothing. So I think on those streams we concluded that analytically it seems like nothing is incoherent. But we also suggested that maybe this is just a problem in our language. And this is what even Lawrence Krauss and some other philosophers have made the argument, and people, non-philosophers like Richard Carrier, have made the argument that maybe this kind of type of nothing doesn't exist. Yeah, because you're trying to imagine that the laws of contradiction don't exist either. And trying to imagine the laws of contradiction not existing is difficult, right? Because even when you say there is nothing, you're saying that it's true that there is nothing. It's not. It's yeah. So you're assuming the law of contradiction there, right? You have to also imagine there's no laws of contradiction, which means nothing can simultaneously exist and not exist at the same time, and that's a contradiction. And that our language breaks down here. As you can hear what I'm saying, it sounds very eccentric and very strange. But you could make the argument that if there was truly a nothing, then at moment's notice it will become inherent. It will have infinite potentiality, and people like Richard Carrier has made the argument, and some other philosophers as well. Some physicists have said nothing will give rise to infinite number of universes, right? And if you imagine the number of types of universes that it can give rise to, because there's no boundaries, it's almost certain that our type of universe will therefore then exist. Now, somebody may still say, "But well, nothing is still incoherent. It doesn't make sense." Well, what is the maximum understanding of nothing we can get to? The closest approximation to nothing. Maybe the laws of contradiction will have to exist, right? We can't suspend that law. What we're trying to imagine is the emptiest amount of space, empty without even space. There's no space. Well, if the laws of contradiction, if you have the law of contradiction and absolutely nothing, then you have infinite potentialities, and from infinite potentialities you get infinite number of possibilities for infinitely different types of universes. And some philosophers have made that, So on this argument, it's simply that our type of universe is guaranteed to arise as one member of a massive infinite constellation of different universes. I don't know how plausible that is, but that's another kind of opinion in this area.
Yeah, I was just wondering, and I haven't thought through it. So this is just a random idea that flew across my head, and I can ask you, I think Ugba is good at set theory. So would a set of nothing contain itself or not? Is the question that I'm wondering. If it contains itself, then it's highly unstable, right? And that means that the hypothesis that we are talking about is a plausibility, and it has an infinite potentiality, right?
I think there wouldn't be a set of nothingness in first place if it's absolute nothingness.
Right. So that
There shouldn't be anything
renders.
at all. That is why it is
Okay.
a metaphysical impossibility per sense. For example, some philosophers say that there is something because there had to be something. Are you getting my point?
So in a sense, we are devoid of the only thing Mahadan is saying we have is laws of contradiction. Nothing, no analytical truths,
You can make the argument then.
no mathematics.
You can make the argument that it's not nothing. It's not really nothing. It's the closest approximation to nothing.
Yeah, it's closest approximation.
It's the closest approximation.
I think
right?
there's a lot of equivocation when people talk about nothingness in these discussions. For example, when Lawrence Krauss talks about, he still accepts that some sort of quantum field exists. So that is not absolute philosophical nothingness. That's still something.
Right. I mean, I think we did when, if anybody is interested, please go ahead and listen to our very first stream. I think probably that's the very first stream that we streamed probably 6, 7, 8 months back in April sometime, I think I remember. So anybody interested, probably that's still relevant. And Madin, probably we need to redo it now that we have a couple of more guys who are, so we should revisit that topic maybe and a little bit.
My opinion would be that absolute nothingness is incomprehensible, because if it can be comprehended, then it would be something.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think Madin mentioned as well, right? I mean, our language breaks down in talking about those things very much, right? So, anyways, yeah, Madin, you wanted to add something?
You could say if the Big Bang came out of nothing, that's absolutely nothing, then that might not be possible. But if it comes from the closest approximation of nothing, then something like our Big Bang is almost inevitable. It could give rise to an infinite number of set of possibilities, and one of those possibilities manifested being the Big Bang, and there could be multiple other universes that came out of that. You get it? because it goes as maximum as possible to approaching nothing until our language breaks down, and before we just hit that contradiction. Do you get it? Just before we hit the contradiction, what is that state? And whatever that state is, we might want to call it the closest approximation to nothing, and that might lead to infinite possibilities, and then that completely works to explain a first, maybe like a first cause, and that will explain the entirety of the rest of the universe. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I'm in a complicated thing. Upa has dropped out. So
that's just like another possibility, basically. What I'm saying is another possibility. So these guys are oversimplifying it to the point where you can't have nothing, so it has to, well, on this idea that I'm putting forward, it's highly likely that something like our universe will come from this sort of closest approximation. Call it maximum nothing, or the most
maximal nothingness.
Yeah, maximal nothingness. If it's maximal nothingness, then there can't be any laws preventing it from being in that state, because then it won't be maximal nothingness anymore. So it must have no boundaries. And if it has no boundaries, then it'll eventually lead to everything.
Right. You stole from sentence pretty much of the
It's the ontological nothing.
Yeah, ontological nothingness, right?
Nothing.
Perfect nothingness, right? A nothingness than that which nothing more can be thought of, very much, right? Something like that, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, I think we have spoken a lot about nothing. I think we should redo that stream, but anybody who's interested can go and look back at our stream. All right, so that was the option number 1 from the option 2 he gave. Then he said, can universe create itself? And for that I countered that, okay, yeah, I mean there have been models where from within a universe there are baby universes that are born, and one of the prime examples I gave that in some certain of models, pretty much black holes behave as if they are singularities, and from those singularities you can have baby universes created, pretty much, right? And I said there's no, I mean, we haven't been able to study black holes, and there are quite good reasons why we haven't been able to. But if you are open to, I mean, I didn't say all this during the stream, and this is just like a post hoc rationalization that I'm doing. But if you can talk about a singularity going into the past 13.8 billion years ago and say that there's like a hot, dense, singularity, and the universe came from there, then the likelihood of these, black holes could give rise to baby universes is also a possibility, right? And you can't just willy-nilly say that, no, it's like we'll strike it out straight away, because how could something give rise to itself, pretty much, right? And that's not something being talked about here, pretty much, right? Maybe what they mean is, then in that sense, in that case, probably universe has already always been existing, pretty much, right?
Yeah,
maybe those two are different cases, right?
You could imagine circular type of universes in which the tail end causes the first end, and it's just like a circular loop. In that sense,
it's kind of many of those loops, pretty much, right? Yeah.
So in that sense, the universe did cause itself in a weird way, but that's not what they mean. They mean, why is the loop existing? Did something else cause the loop? But if you imagine a circular sort of ring to the universe, like this universe dies, that causes another universe, and that universe dies, it causes another universe, and then ultimately goes back to this universe, and it just repeats itself or something like that. Like just imagine a 360-degree turn. Yeah. So it's just replaying itself. In that sense, you can imagine it. The phraseology of the universe created itself makes a little bit more sense, right? Because when you're trying to imagine the universe created itself, you're trying to imagine that the universe didn't exist, and that, yeah, and then the universe that didn't exist created itself, but that is a contradiction, right? So you can't have it like that in a situation where the universe doesn't exist, but it creates itself. I think some people have made the argument that it's like a pregnant mother trying to give birth to herself, right?
Yeah, I think I pointed that out to Mansur, and probably he didn't get what I wanted to say. I exactly pointed that out because this is a contradiction, because universe was nothing to give rise to itself, pretty much. So it couldn't have come. An absurd thing. But he thought that I'm supporting his case. But then I just wanted to move on from that point on. So we struck off, point
Yeah.
2 as well, right? From option 2, point 2 we struck off as well, pretty much. And so the third option that was left was something created, right? And the next conversation that he's gonna have is pretty much about that, right? So Mahadan, before, if you want to add something, Mahadan or anybody, if you want to add something before we run the video.
I think you guys probably would want to add something. Ukba, you want to say something?
Yeah, I would just say that the notion of circular causality is quite controversial as far as I know. Yeah, circular explanation in sort of contingencies is accepted by some philosophers. For example, there's a book by the name Chains of Being. I don't know, Tim Crane or someone, and he argues for circular chains of dependencies and contingencies.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Yeah.
in this sort of situation, I think, Philo, what you should be doing, throwing out to these guys, is the number of different open live issues. Do you get it? So I don't think you should be. Yeah, you can do that. You can go and it's fine to concede certain ground if you genuinely and honestly think that's the case. But like what Ugba and I have said, there are different views on this, and it's not a. Let's just say there's no grand slam case on this. It's a lot of conjecture, and it's hard to test. And as a result, before giving people like Mansur the cake to eat it, and like, hey, have your cake, eat it as well. Before you give it to him, you should make these objections, like a lawyer. Object to everything, not dishonestly, because you have the ammunition here. Because this cosmology and philosophy. We're doing philosophy of cosmology. And these are all open issues. Before I came on here, I did speak to a cosmologist. Philo, you told me to get a cosmologist on. He couldn't, unfortunately, come on today because he was sick. But he just told me, look, you can talk about anything here because nothing is known. And all these possibilities are open issues. They're live issues. Even the concept of nothing. Like Sean Carroll thinks there's nothing wrong with nothing. Right? And all I'm trying to say is that you can make a case. You can make a case for nothing. You can make a case for circular loops and therefore self-caused universes. And therefore, these are open issues. Why should we think Mansur and these guys here have figured it out if some of the greatest physicists and cosmologists today are saying they're open issues?
No,
Yeah.
Madan, I completely agree with your point. I mean, I wanted to raise so many different points to those that the issue of cosmology is not settled yet, right? And so, I mean, the thing was that I didn't want to bring all those. Okay, there is a cyclic cyclic cosmology. There is quantum loop quantum gravity and all those different models, right? I didn't want to bring in there. And they don't assume starting. Basically, they don't assume that something is needed to create it, or any cause is needed, because they are pretty much, even Sean Carroll's new model. I forgot what it is called, but in that model, the time reverses the direction at the singularity, and it's eternal in future and it's eternal in past, basically, right? So that's also one of the models, pretty much. But because I had spent already so much time here, so I just didn't feel like throwing these out,
I would
because
just say that
they would.
even if something appears counterintuitive or, for example, contradictory to us, we should not outrightly reject it, because even in theology, like, you have people like J.C. Beale who appeal to non-classical logic, and they accept that the Trinity is contradictory, and it can still work. Contradiction can still work in the non-classical systems of logic. And even in Islam, you have Safaruk Chaudhry, a Muslim analytic theologian, wrote a paper that the Athari conception of Islamic God is contradictory in nature. But there's nothing wrong in it that if you accept a non-classical system of logic, it will work fine with it. The contradictions will not spread everywhere. They will only limit to the conception of God. So I don't think that there should be an absolute answer to the question of what explains the universe or what caused the universe. You should be open to all ideas.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. In this situation, that's what you need to be doing with them. So these guys, like he's at this moment, from what I saw from Mansur and all, these guys look very nice at this moment. They're being very sweet with you, I think, from what I've seen. But at the same time, I think you should like at least tell them, like Uqba has said, that all of these, and I have said, all of these are live situations. You can say that you understand that there's an intellectual difficulty trying to reconcile contradictions, but people who have been spending their lives thinking about these things don't have a problem with these things, and because they realize physics is a little bit like that at a deep level. You know, the concept of a four-dimensional space, we can't conceive it. Can you conceive of a four-dimensional space? Yet four-dimensional spaces are completely mathematically consistent, and so on. So not everything that we can conceive with our brains that makes intuitive sense is necessarily true, and certain things that are counterintuitive is not necessarily false.
True. Right. I agree. All right. Shall we play the audio then? I mean, the video.
Reasonable reasons.
Kelly, you want to add something to it, or shall we move on? I think Kelly has stepped out. So we're gonna run the video, right?
Sorry, Philo, just want to make this point. I'm eliminating all the possibilities which are not reasonable. So what we're left with in option number 2, not your option number 1, in which universe is always there. Option number 2, only one option left out of the 3 scenarios. Something else caused our universe. And we can talk about that. What is that something? Okay. So if you want to go along this line, I can go along and establish that that's something that caused the universe. Ultimately, by avoiding infinite regress, you'll come to a belief, or a position rather, that there was something that was always there that caused this universe, which is very similar to your option number 1. Do you want to go there, or do you want to go directly to your something has to be always there? Because something has to be always there.
Go on. Let's take your option.
Okay, fine. So now you have an option in which something else caused our universe, our cosmos. Okay, this something that caused our universe must have the ability, must also have will. At least these 2 essential properties: will or a volition to bring about this universe, and the ability. If you say, oh,
My
then
question would be why.
not why. I'm saying if these were absent, the universe will not result. It's a necessary condition.
No,
it's a necessary
that's an
requirement.
assumption. That's
No, not an assumption.
Right?
This is a prerequisite of an originator.
You have to demonstrate it.
I will demonstrate. Okay.
Yes,
If something that is brought into existence while it was nothing, okay, then this is a transformation from one state to another, state of non-existence to existence. This transformation to take place, you need a willing agent, an agent with a volition to make the transformation. To give you a scenario, if you ever want to make a cup of tea and you go there in your kitchen and you sit there, your teacups and your tea bags and your milk, they're not going to rearrange themselves. They're not going to transform from the state they are in, static, sitting there inside your fridge, the milk, the tap has water in it. You have a cooker that has a fire and the lighter. They're all sitting there in their places. These things will not come together, rearrange themselves to make a cup of tea with, say, 1 spoon of sugar. You have to make a volitional intention there to bring this about. So you bring this about with your own power and ability to collect them, transform from one to the other, and make a cup of tea in a cup or in a mug. That's how this happens. If there was no volition involved, if there was no ability or power involved, and you sit there, you can sit there for billions and zillions and Googleplex years, the cup of tea will never be produced.
I think, see, this is the point. I think I should have countered this a little better, even though I countered. And I said I gave him an example, which we're going to listen to later on, that I gave him an example that volition, he hasn't yet demonstrated. He has just given an analogy that a tea won't be. I mean, he has to demonstrate. Now his claim is that you would sit there for billions and zillions of years. You haven't conducted that test. You, just because it sounds absurd to you that a tea won't be, won't come in existence automatically. You just just throw it away, wherein the possibility is not zero. I think Madan, we did talk about some experiment where certain n number of monkeys were given keyboards, and they were allowed to randomly type anything, and then for an infinite amount of time, and one of them would invariably be able to write something like Macbeth, or Othello, or whatever you may have, a Shakespearean play. Pretty much, it is inevitable that this will be there. Have been tests conducted on that, pretty much, right? That this is a real possibility, and with many number of possibilities, every option that is out available there will take place. Pretty much every route that is possible will take place and will happen, pretty much, right? So that is one point I should have pressed a little bit more on, that point. But what Mansur wants you to think here is that his option, that volition is a requirement, is a must. He hasn't demonstrated it, he's just asserted it, and he's asserting with his own authority, in a sense, basically. At least I don't see it. Maybe I don't know what your take is on this.
Yeah, no. So in this situation, what he's trying to establish is that there is a first cause, and the first cause must have will and volition. And the reason that he gives is that in order to go from a state of nothing or state of no time, and then he starts giving examples of something within time, which is a mind, and you need intentionality to create or cause something. So yeah, the example that he's giving obviously is something within time and space, and a mind that exists within time and space. And he's correct to say that intentionality, volition is, in some sense, on a philosophical level, a cause to do things. You intentionally direct things to make a cup of tea, etc. But he's picking on that particular example, completely ignoring the fact that the universe is full of other causes that are not intentional and volitional. For example, although the tea won't fall into the cup in that manner, electrons are firing, nerves are firing, atoms are moving back and forth, energy is being redistributed. And these are all arguably, colloquially speaking, cause and effect.
Trees are falling, mountains are being made, lavas, magmas are being churned around, moving around.
In fact,
Galaxies are being made, black holes are being made, and all those things. Yeah.
If the only form of causation was a volitional one, then he would have a point. So remember, what he's already made you concede, or you both agreed to, is that in this situation, there's no infinite regress. You're imagining that. You didn't have to concede that. That's another point where I would have said, put your lawyer hat back on and go, why do we need
to I didn't get a chance to, because he said in a jiffy and he moved away from that point. So I didn't get to address that point. And I wanted to, basically towards the end, they just removed me, basically. But if I had a chance, I would have made those points, because I remembered that he had made a point, at least at some place, that infinite regress is not possible. And I just wanted to drag him in, basically, because infinite regress he did talk about, and somewhere probably along the line he'll talk about contingency as well. And I wanted to at least talk to him regarding those 2 points as well. But then, see, this, when you go to these streams, you are pretty much tied up. I think maybe I'm being too critical of them. Maybe this is how we do it as well, and somebody from outside sees us the same way that we see them, right? But in my opinion, and I might be biased, I think we give our interlocutors much more time to articulate what their points are. We give them enough time. We don't steer we just try to keep the conversation to a single point, but we let our interlocutors talk. And this is something that I realize we don't get a chance. So this is something that I don't think we get a chance at these streams, pretty much, right? You are pretty much bound by, you're like a puppet over in their streams, pretty much, right?
Kylie, did you say something? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, he was saying we are getting a static from your side. I think we need somebody to donate us nice, high quality, high fidelity mic systems for doing what we are doing, right?
Or I could just put my hands in my pocket and just get something a bit better than my phone, you know. I'm not exactly. I don't think I need donations, but it's just me being a bit lazy about it, really.
All right, go ahead.
Sorry, am I talking or?
Charlie, you have any?
Yeah.
Let me just quickly finish what I was saying. So you have all this form of mindless, impersonal causation. So why is Mansur just focusing on the only form of causation that he seems to think exists? That's not the only form of causation, right? I mean, in fact, in any sort of philosophical lecture, in order to give an example of causation, you will be talking about the fire burning on the wood. You know, you'll be talking about the dominoes hitting the other dominoes and it dropping, the billiard balls, right? The feather hitting your skin, the brain firing a neuron, you know, atoms decomposing or whatever. These are all forms of causation. This is common sense. So Mansur is not wrong to say that things need causes in order for effects to be produced, apart from maybe a couple of examples in quantum mechanics, right? Having said that, he's just limited it and narrowed it to a mental causation. And that's not the only form of causation, right? And if we do admit that there's no infinite regress and there has to be, something that have always existed to produce the universe, right? And he's now demanded that it has to be a will, has to be volition. And then you asked him, why does it have to be volition? His point is, because to go from one state to another, you need volition. No, you don't. Because that if that was the only form of causation to go from one state to another, then he'd be right, but it's not. To go from one state to another, you can also just have atoms. To go from one state to another, you can look at the entirety, you can just open up a scientific textbook and look at the different forms of causation that exists, right? In fact, the vast majority of everything that we know is not deliberate intentional actions. When stars form, when galaxies form, you know, when a tree forms, these are all examples beyond intention, and they dominate scientific textbooks. In fact, the inductive survey of evidence shows that the vast majority of causes are impersonal causes, not personal causes, right? So where is he getting this from then? The best inference then, therefore, to go from a state of A to B would be it's based on induction. To make the best explanation, best inference would be it's impersonal causation, if anything.
Right, I agreed. I think I did mention all these, I just gave an example of mountains and all that stuff. And then what their point was, what their retort was basically, where are these causes tracing back to? Aren't they tracing back to, Big Bang and all those things, basically? They're going back and back. What caused that? What caused that? And then, so kind of the stupid argument in a sense, basically, because it doesn't make sense, right? You comparing, when I say, when you're talking about the, mindful causation, basically, then you're talking about, humans and all those things. And then you're not thinking back that you were created by your parents by their parents, and so on and so forth. And maybe life came through some, what do you call, inorganic chemistry to, organic or something like that, right? And there were still causations. They were like mindless causations, basically, if you go far back enough, when humans were not there, or no living beings, pretty much, right?
Yeah, Philo, you're absolutely right. Because look, we're talking about the beginning of the universe and before it, right? We're talking about what caused the Big Bang, and we've already at this moment we've hypothetically assumed there has to be a necessary cause. Now, this could be something like an eternal cause. Here's the weird thing. As we zoom out or go backwards from us, as in from our parents, and then go from like 4 billion years of evolution, then you go from Earth, the formation of the Earth, then you go formation of stars and galaxies, and so on and so on. Every single cause is an impersonal, mindless, cause. It's a mechanical cause, all the way back up to the Big Bang. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we're assuming then in this heavily 99.999% concentration of impersonal causes, just before the Big Bang there was a mind. There was you. There was some guy sitting there. Why would you think that?
Some guy with a huge beard, huge white beard, basically.
Yeah. I mean, the Big Bang itself is a mindless cause, a mindless set of effects. So why would an eternal cause necessarily have to be a mind just there? The simplest explanation is when you look at what is the most common ontology or the most common substance that makes up the rest of the universe, and it's just physical causes, mindless physical causes, all the way up to 14 billion light years, whatever it is, all the way up to there. But then we need to imagine all of a sudden there'll be a surprise, like Santa Claus, you know what I mean, like a random gift, where after all these physical causes, there's this immaterial mind sitting there behind it all. And my point is, the simpler explanation is going based on probabilities. Induction shows the frequency of all the causes that we know are mindless, impersonal, mechanical causes, which in essence might be waves and all this stuff. Whatever, they're not minds. Yeah, and therefore, the better inference would be if there is an eternal cause, and where does the evidence point towards? Yeah, go on.
Sorry, Madhid, finish your point.
No, you know what I'm saying. You know, I mean, yeah, go on.
Yeah, the very fundamental question that I wanted to ask, and then see certain things that you don't remember at that point when you're talking to these guys, but then these are afterthoughts pretty much, right? And I'm not sure, I haven't read about this, but the most fundamental question is causation a universal, what do you call, phenomena? Can it exist outside space-time? Is it a requirement? And I don't know what scientists have to say. I don't know what the philosophers have to say about it. But I somehow question that thing as well, because causation seems so fundamental to our lives. I'm not too sure that. I mean, it seems like a possibility that causation is probably a property of space-time, maybe. Just about it, and then outside it, maybe there's no causation. Probably it doesn't even exist. It is a possibility, right?
Yeah, many
And in
philosophers
that
argue
sense,
that
then our universe becomes eternal, pretty much, right? Because
yeah, that
Sorry?
because
Yeah, but
of reality is exhausted at the beginning of the universe.
Yeah, that is what Mansur might be trying to say. There isn't a real. The thing is, if you these guys are weird though. I find them a bit weird because they're not following the actual arguments. They're kind of making it up as they're going along. Here, somebody a more competent philosopher would be saying that space-time came into existence, right? Time didn't exist, but there would have been an eternal cause that always existed without a time flow. So it'd be very much similar to B theory of time. It'll be like a
all states are existing in
Yeah.
in here and now. Basically, that's the B theory of time. Right?
Yeah, this is how this is kind of how William Lane Craig argues God to be, but then he kind of messes up because he needs, for his own theology,
Yeah,
God
he
to work.
theory.
Yeah, exactly. He needs God to work within time.
I thought
I
thought he was a theory of time.
He is
A
an
theory,
atheist.
pretty much.
Yeah.
He
What I'm
is
trying
an
to say is
atheist.
the
Because on
implications of
B theory, nothing begins to exist. Everything already exists. So the first premise is not true on B theory. Although Andrew Locke argues that his version of the Kalam is compatible with the B theory, but Lane Craig objects objects to it.
Mhm. All right, Kelly, you want to add something to it?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I think
I mean,
continue to say.
just one moment, because William. Let me just finish off, and then Kylie can go. What I'm trying to say is that I think William Lane's conception of God is that there's an unchanging mind. And the only way the implications of that view, although he doesn't spell it out, that it is much more resembling a B theory type of, that there is no time flow, there is no cause and effect in the same A theory sense. It's rather an eternal cause that's always caused the universe. Can you see what I'm saying? It didn't go from point A.
Madan,
Exactly.
Madan,
Mahathir, I think your voice is
you're
disappearing,
breaking
but
up.
Yeah.
You're
but
breaking up.
actually what you're saying is something that has been discussed in even in the Islamic philosophers'
Yeah.
time,
Ghazali
probably.
discussed it, I think.
Exactly.
That God
Ghazali
eternally willed
discussed
to
it.
instantiate the universe at a certain point in time.
Exactly. And the question was, is creation eternal as well? And it sort of
Yeah,
relates
he
to
was
it.
arguing with the
Exactly.
philosophers, the Abyssinians and the others.
Yeah, yeah. And that is very relevant because some Muslim philosophers do agree. Madhav, I'm getting a feedback. So some Muslim philosophers do agree that that creation is eternal as well, because God is not in time. So every action that he does cannot be. I mean, his actions are also not in time. Whatever he creates would essentially be eternal as well, because otherwise, what it would mean is that he does things in a sequence, and that is not how God would operate, because he's a timeless entity. So therefore, God's creation, God's direct creation, would also be eternal, just like he is. Of course, the creation eternality depends on the eternality of God. So it is
Right.
contingent upon that.
God's first
But
creation
nevertheless,
has to be, yeah.
yeah, any direct
God's first
creation of
creation
God
has to be eternal as well.
must be
Right.
must be eternal. And that is the only thing that makes logical sense. And if you go there, then what Mansur is trying to say, then I'm getting a feedback once again. So then what Mansur is trying to say, that there's a transformation from non-existence to existence when it comes to universe, that becomes totally irrelevant, because essentially he has to agree that creation, whatever it is, the first creation, the first direct creation from which everything else would have arisen out of, was eternal, and it never not existed, which means that there never was any transformation that happened, which essentially means there never was any need for a will behind it. So his own line of reasoning
His
would lead
own
him
line of
to,
reasoning is defeated by
yeah,
his own argument, pretty much, right?
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
his line of reasoning is defeated by himself. So
right,
it's
right.
an irrelevant argument. The Kalam cosmological. So it is the argument that he's trying to make is it's a Kalam cosmological argument, and there are many ways to go
Yeah.
refute it.
This was the
One
problem
way
with
is
even with the Ghazalian version. Because
exactly,
for the eternal will to change from the moment of non-instantiation to instantiation, there will have
yeah,
to be time. It presupposes time. But if
exactly.
time is presupposed, then God is past actual infinite.
Mm,
So
exactly.
it defeats
So
the sense.
so
Yeah, so
it
some
doesn't.
actual
So
infinite will
so
exist then.
so So their worldview or their explanation is no better than any atheistic explanation. And that is the point. You are not giving us anything better than the atheistic worldview. And
Yeah.
therefore, Mansur asking you or anyone else to weigh or choose between one of those options, which one is better or not, or which one is less likely, it's an irrelevant question. And it is in a way an unanswerable question. Why would you even ask that question? There's no way to assign
I would s-
probabilities to these options.
yeah,
So I think
but
that
Kyle,
is very, yeah, yes,
yeah, Kylie, I know you're finishing off there, but I would actually say that a natural cause to the universe, an eternal universe, let's say, is far more likely, of course. That is what philosophers like Graham Oppy ultimately conclude. It's the
Yeah.
simpler theory, it's the more virtuous theory. Reason being that is the most common ontology that we have.
It is
yeah,
based on induction, you can say, right?
based on induction,
Yeah,
of
based
course,
on
based
induction,
on
you can
induction.
say that
So
that's the
Yeah,
more
but
in
probable.
certain regards, you could give it more weight. Yes, I
yeah,
agree with that.
exactly. That's one reason, but other reasons also include, for example, just positing the expectations that we would have with the theory of God versus the expectations that we would have with a theory of nature or a natural cause. If naturalism is true, for example, it is expected that the universe will be very old, chaotic, random, a lot of wasted space, a lot of trial and error events, a lot of emptiness, a lot of meaninglessness to it, and so on. It will require this elaborate system of cause and effect, blind processes to eventually lead to
Mathematically, yeah.
yeah, eventually lead to this sort of small, barren sort of area of the universe where somehow on the teeth of everything, some sentient beings form. On the other hand, on a God theory, that's not the only way God could have created life. God has a multitude of different ways of creating life. Indeed, it's logically possible. That's one thing God can do. But God is not necessarily required to do that thing. And therefore, theism doesn't necessarily predict this sort of universe. Naturalism, however, predicts this sort of universe, right?
And I agree with you with that. But just, I mean, why I said what I said was because I'm looking at it particularly right now from the perspective of this particular argument. So when you're talking about this just simple argument of causation and the eternal causation, I'm saying it gives us no better explanation than an atheistic worldview, at least. And this is just simply from, setting aside everything else, just looking at this argument from, causation or the first causation.
Conceptually, a mental cause causing the universe, a mind, is no better than an impersonal cause. Both would be from eternity. Both would just be, etc. And in fact, it doesn't make a lot of sense because the universe came into existence, so it requires that the God, the mental causation, the entity that is meant to be timeless, it must have gone from a state of there being no universe to a state of there being a universe, and therefore that presupposes, as Uqba said, time, right? Whereas if the universe was always there, for example, it would make a lot more sense because it avoids the entirety of all of that. You can make the argument that all of these ideas show that, if anything, the more intuitive solution would be that the universe was always there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or was always there holding it together, rather than going from a state of non-existence to coming into existence. Because the problem may not be much of a problem if God always existed and the universe always existed from eternity. You see that, like you said, Kylie, if the universe existed from eternity, then God could have also caused the universe from eternity, because then you have an eternal cause causing an eternal consequence.
This is the Neoplatonic view of creation.
Yeah. But we don't have that. So God creates that problem because by saying it's timeless, right? Whereas the atheist is not burdened by needing to posit a timeless cause. You can have, like, beyond the Big Bang, you can have another time-bound eternal universe, and that would explain it. Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Yeah, just one thing that I wanted to point out about his flaw that he used is he insisted that the first cause has had to have a will, that the relation of the first cause to the universe has to have will. But I do not agree with this, because the relation could be necessary. It could be brute, like the will is brute. We do not have a contrastive explanation for why this universe rather than some other. And the third possibility is an indeterministic causation. So we have actually three possibilities.
Like a random,
about
you mean something,
right,
something
yeah,
truly
random.
random. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And I think the first thing,
the option 3 is what we usually posit, right? If we are saying that
we
there's no,
naturalists align with the
we
indeterministic
naturalists posit the
cause.
option 3 pretty much most of the time, basically saying that it could be as theists say, it could be a mind that caused it, right? But we say no, it could be a random causation, basically.
yeah.
Yes.
And something interesting over here. So I was recently, I think I also shared this with Philo and Mahadin. So it was a paper that I was reading, and I have not read any work of Ghazali directly, but it was referring to some of Ghazali's statement, and it quoted some of his work. And what Ghazali was actually saying is God is an entity who does things for no reason at all. So actually, whatever he does is truly, essentially, he didn't use the word meaningless, but truly anything that he does would be meaningless, and he has no particular purpose for doing anything at all. So essentially speaking, something truly random and a will who does something for no reason at all. I don't think there's any way to distinguish between these two things, except that you have attached consciousness to this one entity, and other is that has no consciousness and is just doing things, spews out effects for no reason or randomly. So I think once again, if if their conception of God is one like Ghazali, where it does things for no reason at all, I think there is no way for them to distinguish it from something that is truly random or a truly random cause.
No, and that, yeah, I mean, I agree to that point, Callie. That is one thing. And then the second thing with that same hypothesis, that Ghazali's point of view, is that God won't care for anything else. It would create
Yeah.
and just leave it alone, pretty much. So in that case, yeah, I mean, as you said,
Mm.
it is indistinguishable from a God existing and God not
Or
existing,
not.
pretty much.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, why
Yeah.
Ghazali used this would be because of the reason that if God has a reason to perform certain action, then he will
Yeah.
do so in every possible world, which will make
Yeah.
it a necessary reason.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then applying necessitarianism, which he opposed. But on this account, that God does things for no reason, meaning that God's actions are a brute fact. Then if you accept that brute facts exist, then why can't the existence of the universe itself be a brute fact?
Brute
What's
fact,
the
right?
problem with that?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
I
that's
think
that's an
so. I
argument.
think he did this in response to. Probably he was doing this to resolve the contingency argument, right?
Yeah, he was arguing the Abyssinian tradition. Abyssinians argue that the universe is a necessary
Yeah.
effect of God.
Yeah.
Madan, you wanted to add something,
No,
right?
no, I just wanted to say Graham Oppie makes the same argument against William Lane Craig in the debate that he had very recently in the last
Yeah.
2-3 years.
He was
I mean,
arguing about mathematical truth.
is that the debate that they had? Yeah, I think that's the debate. So which I can't remember. Oh, I think it's the debate that he had with Andrew Loke. I think it was Andrew Loke. He made the argument that ultimately the God's choices are either necessary or brutally contingent, right? There's no reason for it.
Yeah.
If it's necessary, then God must have done that, and that's theologically unfavorable. He must have the option to not do it, and if the option to if he has the option to produce a different type of world. But then, what is the reason why he chooses one world over another? Well, it can't be necessary if he has that choice. But if it's therefore it has to be brutally contingent. Therefore, ultimately, God's choices are brutally contingent, and that's very analogous to a brutally contingent universe. So if we do end up with a contingent universe, then it should not be any more dissimilar in that regard, because we end up with a brute contingent fact that the universe exists, and that's it. It's just a brute fact. God's choices are also brute facts, and it's completely symmetrical.
And I think it also applies. Madan, getting a feedback. So when these people say that God is wise, now calling God wise should mean something, if it actually does mean something when they use that word, because in many cases they just end up distorting the meaning so much that it means nothing essentially. But let's say if it does
It
mean
has to
something,
mean what we mean, basically. Otherwise, there's
exactly.
no way we can epistemically know what it means, basically, right?
So if God is wise, then once again, what do you mean by God is wise? What reasons? So when God is wise, when they pose this, conception of God, what they're trying to say is that there's specific wisdom that are brute, and once again, that are brute facts in God, and that God would always work with this particular rules, because that is what wisdom means, right? So wisdom would entail that God is working with a certain goal in mind, or with certain rules that he always operates within. But if you're saying that those rules are once again brute facts, and those goals again are also brute facts, then the same problem arises once again. So the concept of a wise God is also against a truly free will.
Yeah. God cannot have a
Right.
libertarian free will. He has to create the best possible world or the best possible creation.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, that's the problem with the perfection and free will, pretty much, right?
Yeah. I mean, if a
Right.
God is perfect, then he must not create anything.
Anything less.
Exactly.
lesser.
No,
Right?
he should not create anything. Truly, true.
Should
That's
not
something
create
that
anything
I
at
think
all.
that
Right? Yeah. I mean,
anything at all,
yeah.
because anything that he create would be less than perfect, and he should not create a perfect being. Should be perfect in every way, every manner, and he should be a perfect. He shouldn't allow anything imperfect, and therefore, he would not create anything. He would
Yeah,
just
the
be on
way
his
to
own.
escape this would be to assign to remove the aspect of will from God. Then you will have to accept that
Only
God necessarily creates. It's part of His being to create. It's
Yeah.
just like the
the only
sun's
thing,
rays
only thing,
have
only
to flow
thing
from
that
sun.
God can create, only thing that God can create is a clone of Himself that is perfect like Him, pretty much.
Yeah, this is what the Neoplatonists argue, and this is a sort of reasoning in the Trinitarian framework
Yeah.
that the Son is identical to God in some sense, and the Father
Right.
necessarily creates the Son.
But then
Right.
somehow new Platists also argue that in every next level of creation, something is, every next creation is less perfect than the other somehow,
Yeah,
and
so
then
the
uses that
on their
perfection
view,
with
the first
every next
intellect
step.
or the first creation
Exactly.
is lacking in terms of being independent. That it has to depend on his existence
Yeah.
on the
But then
first one.
yeah, but somehow, I mean, what they start from that the only weakness that entity has is that it is not independent. It is dependent on that
Yeah,
cause before it. But then somehow it also has all these other. I mean, for example, us, we are created. We are one of those entities which arise out of that entity. We have many other weaknesses. We just don't have that simple single weakness, that is that we are dependent. We have many other weaknesses along with that. So that also is a problem. So someday we'll discuss that new Platist, divine simplicity world
yeah,
concept
but
as
it
well.
is. It seems more coherent than this one.
It does, but it seems very in line with atheism.
Yeah,
I think it's barely different than atheism. Sorry to say.
yeah, you're right. I mean, their theodicy is just.
Yeah.
All right. Let's not digress. Let's not digress.
Yeah. Let's not.
Okay. Pulling back, I think we should move on, right? I think we have so much to talk still. We are gonna curb ourselves, our instincts.
No, but
And
I'd like to ask over here: do we have a lot to talk about, or essentially we haven't listened to the entire conversation? But I think, do you think there are some points that we are missing right now? Because I think
no,
the
I
whole
don't think
point,
so. We are missing anything.
the,
I'll just maybe just summarize a little bit as to
yeah,
what other things are
I
to
think that
come,
would be
and
better
we'll
because
probably skip.
now,
I
yeah,
just wanted to, Kelly. So I just wanted to probably show what happens after I left, basically, right? And then I
yeah,
just wanted
that would
you
be
guys,
interesting.
everybody, to see exactly. But before that, I'm gonna just, just summarize as to Mansur gives another example. Basically, he insists on another example, and that is basically of something like, okay, there is a lot of plastic and other stuff and aluminum and whatnot you have in a room or something, and there is a generator basically. Would that generator create an aeroplane? Basically, this is the analogy he gave, another analogy, and I said, and he used something like pretty much you give it, again, same thing, billions of zillions of years or whatever. Maybe he gave it or he didn't give it, but that's irrelevant. But would it be logical to assume that there'll be an aeroplane? And I said, this is, in this case, it won't. But I mean, I should probably have insisted on there as well that, you can't say no, never, right? Because there might be laws of physics, a zillion years from now, they might take over and something might, in infinite iteration, something might come up. It might seem, hugely problematic to our logic, to our sensibilities, that how could that happen? But you just can't dismiss that possibility, right? That's a
It's
absurdity to just dismiss a
exactly.
possibility,
I
right?
mean, uh, you mentioned the example of, I'm not sure there's a term about the concept of that infinite library or whatever it is. I'm not sure
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
infinite, yeah,
Where,
monkeys, certain monkeys
yeah.
infinitely typing, and then
So
something like Macbeth or Othello, or
uh,
that takes place
exactly.
very much, right?
So if we have a book which has infinite arrangement of alphabets, or let's say only English alphabets, it would include every book written by Shakespeare, every book written by every human, every book that could have been written by a human, every statement that makes sense. Of course, it would include a lot of garbage in it, but it would include all those. It would be a part of that book, or everything that has ever been written by every human writer would be a part of it. What that actually shows you is, if there is a certain there are certain elements, and arrangement of those elements in specific arrangements make sense, or are let's say desirable, then if you give almost an infinite amount of time, if you're given that amount of time, those arrangement would actually ultimately arise, because it is just one of those arrangements. It is
Exactly.
just like a deck of cards, where, for example, it is very
In,
unlikely
in fact,
that you'll have,
Khalid,
yeah.
in fact, those arrangements would arise infinite times, infinite many times,
Exactly,
basically, not just
exactly.
once,
In
not
infinite,
just once.
if it is infinite number of, if you have infinite amount of time, then those arrangements are definitely and most certainly going to arise. They are going to come up sometime at some point in time. They are sure to come up. It's not unlikely, not only likely, it becomes absolutely certain.
Yeah, I would agree with you guys.
Exactly.
And how I would frame this is that there is nothing inherently impossible about things rearranging themselves to form a concrete structure. It is
Exactly.
improbable, but not impossible. Just like there is
Right. I
nothing
think
inherently
that's
contradictory with the concept of beginningless infinite. If Mansur insists that there is some logical contradiction within the concept of things arranging themselves to form a design, for example, then he will have to show that contradiction in it. Just like people have to show people show the people who posit that actual infinites are not possible, they try to show contradictions in this concept using different types of paradoxes. So it's upon Mansur, the burden of proof is upon Mansur to show that things cannot arrange themselves to form a design.
And
right.
I
I mean,
mean,
there is no
what
logical contradiction in that. Pretty much, it's just
one
they
of
are
the
working
arrangements.
on a probabilistic model. They are saying that probability wise, this is almost impossible. That's, I mean, this is, it's infinitesimal probability. Pretty much, that's what they are willing to. I mean, they're saying, and by that they mean that this is almost this is impossible. Not even almost
Madam, we are
impossible.
getting a feedback. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're right. I
Madam.
just want to add one more thing. That these people often, mention entropy when they're having such discussions, and they don't understand what entropy is. Entropy is a probabilistic uh, proposition or law. All it says is that entropy increases of an overall system, but in certain localized area within the entire system, the entropy can reduce. And why can that happen? Because all entropy is saying is that the arrangement overall gets uniform over time, and they get uh, what you call distributed equally. But in certain local or small areas, entropy can reduce, for example. And it's simple, because what the entropy is actually saying is, for example, if we have a container with only oxygen molecules inside it, and that container's cap is open, all the oxygen will go in, and it will go out, and it will end up into a mix of all that oxygen. The oxygen will end up mixing with all the other gases in the air. Now, entropy would say that that is what is going to happen, because it is going to mix up. But now, what is not going to happen, or what is not expected, is that the bottle will now ultimately will end up with only oxygen molecules on its own. But it's not that it is impossible, it's only that it is very improbable. So somewhere in the universe, a certain local area could only have oxygen molecules, just as a coincidence. Yes, that is possible. And if the universe is infinitely large, then that is absolutely certain, and somewhere that is actually happening. So I think they also don't understand the law of entropy.
Madin.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to talk about what this person is saying. He's saying surely it is irrational to take surely it is irrational to take it as a logical possibility. Ruling it as not impossible shouldn't make it logically possible by default. The proof is in the fact that you have no evidence it's ever happened, right? Well, if you want to talk about the logical possibility or the impossibility of something, it's not about empirical evidence. That's the whole point of stuff like the Kalam cosmological argument, right? It uses entities like minds, immaterial minds, which we have no empirical evidence of. And as long as it's conceptually coherent, which the defender of Kalam would have to show, he would be showing that it's logically possible. And then he will try to infer that it's the best explanation. So clearly, you don't need empirical evidence to argue something is at least possible, logically possible. All by logical possibilities we mean is free of contradictions. There's no metaphysical issues with it. That's all you have to do. And in this particular comment, it's saying surely it's irrational to take it as a logical possibility. Well, the burden will be on yourself to show that it's a logical possibility. We may not need to show that it is a logical possibility. We just may be unsure that whether or not it's logically possible or not. So you could be in a situation where you don't know whether or not an infinite amount of time with certain variables would lead to certain consequences. Let's say you can't really know. Well, it doesn't mean it can't happen either. But you'll be correct to say then we can say it can happen, but you can't say it can't happen, right? So if you want to show that it can't happen, which is when you can say it's irrational, yeah. If we use irrational to say that it's highly improbable, unlikely, metaphysically absurd, logically contradictory, then the burden is on you, Justice, to show that it's logically contradictory, because we may not actually say that it's logically possible. However, I do argue that it is logically possible. In the sense that there's no contradictions. So for example, if you have an infinite amount of time and you have certain variables, like Kylie said, of data, then you will have certain forms forming by definition. It's just basic math, right? And if that's the case, then you have to show that something's wrong in the math, something's wrong in the thought experiment. What's wrong with the thought experiment? So if you have an infinite computer that has existed infinitely, synthesizing every possible number, eventually you will have it go across every possible number, right? There's no logical possibilities there, right? So if eventually it will go across 1 trillion, obviously, etc. Where's the issue there? So I don't see that to be like a irrationality or anything like that if it's logically possible. But if you think it's logically impossible, you have to show what's logically impossible about it.
Right. All right. I think we should move towards closing the stream, right, guys?
Yeah.
Just before we leave, I said Mansur gave airplane analogy. Madan, we are getting feedback from your side. All right, so we did speak about that analogy, and then I think the other guy, what's his name, Muris. I'm not quite sure how it is pronounced. I think it's written Muris, right? He stepped in sometime, and then he started talking about. See the kind of level these guys have. I think what was the timeline when he jumped in, and he
And flip
basically
the script. You have a blank canvas. How did we get here?
We are here, but that's
You have a blank canvas. How did we get here? And quite frankly, it's
and this is I'm don't think that I'm just cutting it short and showing it to you. Eventually, when he was tired that I'm not I'm not agreeing to their their version of things, and then their version of the story, pretty much, or mythology, or whatever you call it, he just asked the same question back again. I'm just wondering what happened there.
it's taxing. So why don't I engage you and flip the script? You have a blank canvas. How did we get
Right. And I responded to him. That was exactly the first question that was asked, pretty much, right? I said, I don't know. I mean, it's just how did the, eventually he said, how did we get here, right? And I said, I mentioned to him what he meant by that, whether he meant by us as in humans or maybe something else. And for us, I said, I mean, our parents and parents and all that, and all the way back, and pretty much. And he said, no, the cosmos, right? And I said, that was exactly the first question that I answered to, that I don't know the answer to, pretty much, right? I don't know is the right answer. I don't know where the universe came from. And that's a very reasonable position to hold, pretty much, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I think these guys need to maybe, read up a little bit, probably, I should say. And when I left, after I left, I think they started, I think they to be fair to them, they did ask me about why do I go to all these streams and all those things, and I told them honestly that it's a good idea, maybe just to keep these conversational channels open, basically, and having exchange of ideas. Basically, I talk to you, maybe I learn something, maybe you learn something from me, and all those things. And yeah, but after having had that exchange, this is what he had to say.
So just a quick reflection. There is a possibility you can come and speak to us. Okay, you take care in the meantime. Bye. Right. So just a quick reflection, Brother Muris. In this, you see,
can you just pause it for a moment?
Some people come here with the intention to promote.
Yeah. Let me just answer Justice on this, because he's been talking to me. He's asking me this question because I said it. If Justice, if you want to look up a paper by Wes Morrison and Alex Malpass, they work on this issue in more detail. So I don't want this video to become just about infinities, So in essence, in essence, it's not just about the contingency argument. It's just about infinities in general. So it's not an extension of the contingency argument. In general, you can just talk about infinities. Is it possible for infinite number of numbers to be counted if you exist for an infinite amount of time? And philosophers like Wes Morrison and Alex Malpass have written a paper showing that indeed every single possible number will be counted. Yeah, they distinguish between that and a particular moment in which you have counted all numbers. There won't be a particular moment where you've finished the series. Of course not, because there's an infinite, right? And if you stop the counting at any one point, you will still be at a unfinished series. You'll be at a particular number. So at any particular moment, no, you wouldn't have counted all the numbers, and there'll always be a potential, an infinite potential. But here's the thing: we have to suspend the idea that you're stopping at any moment. What you're doing rather is you're saying, if it goes for an infinity, how many numbers would be counted? The answer that Alex Malpass and Wes Morrison gave is that you will count every number, right? So although there won't be a particular moment where you have counted all the numbers, you will count every number. Yeah, and as such, we can know that an infinite series can be counted, and therefore there will be a one-to-one correlation, a one-to-one relation between you counting and you counting each number. Each number will be uttered from your mouth. And this thought experiment, we're not saying it's physically something that happens, right? Because we don't live forever, obviously, and we might not have a number of people to live, but we're trying to imagine whether is this conceivable? Is this system something contradictory, metaphysically absurd? Now, you'll have to go through the paper a bit more deeper, because they write 10 pages on it. And yeah, Alex Malpass and Wes Morrison, Philo has written it in the box. But if you read that, you might find that interesting, and you may agree, you may disagree, but it's quite interesting.
What I was thinking
Yes,
was,
good.
if he wanted to join, maybe he could have joined, but maybe, yeah. All right, let's run through it.
Promote their channel. That's from what I've seen, and from the exchanges that we've had, I don't think any of our audience would want to, engage with himself in his own channel. Anyone is welcome to go to his channel, but the audience have spoken themselves in the chat and how they felt the conversation went. I mean, we were having a reasonable discussion, breaking down reasonably one option after the other, eventually to come to a point which is what is sensible to accept. Being pragmatic, we have to make pragmatic decisions in the options. So it seems like these individuals who, are trying to engage with Muslims and others don't have any sincerity and the willingness to accept truth.
See, this is the word that I keep hearing from these Muslim apologists, basically, and the word sincerity. What does it mean? And what I have come to, realize is that in their lingo or in their parlance, what it means is whoever agrees with them, right, to their points, however absurd those points may be, those guys are sincere, by the way. And anybody who counters those points based on rational arguments, and good arguments, is not sincere. At least that's my take. Maybe you guys disagree with me, but this I have seen. I mean, I have heard Muslim Lantern. I've seen him do exactly the same thing. These guys do exactly the same thing. There's another apologist named Hamza. I think he's a league beyond everybody else, pretty much, right? I think Kali, Madin, all of us have heard him as well, right? So I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
What do you mean exactly by sincerity? I mean, and I'm gonna be open here because I think we are all open about these things. I mean, just like how they challenge everybody else's belief system, they do criticize Christianity, they do criticize atheism, they do criticize Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Zoroastrianism, Judaism, whatever you may have, right? And they have a right to do that. There's nothing wrong in it. So do we have. And if we go to their stream and go and say that, okay, we find some problems within your worldview, let's have a chat, let's have a nice conversation, see if we can together reach to a truth together, basically, or at least maybe you concede some point, maybe I'll concede some points, and whoever has better arguments, probably their worldview is probably more grounded in reality, or at least solid arguments. And that doesn't seem to be the case, because every time you go or somebody else goes with some real good points, and then that case, that accusation of being insincere is just like slapped upon your face, pretty much, right? And somehow just it's disheartening, because I don't think I said anything disrespectful to them. It's just that I didn't agree, right? And still I'm insincere, basically, because they think, okay, I came there to promote my channel, or whatever they thought, pretty much. I mean, I did tell them that this channel, we have 3 people and 3 members, and we do discuss mostly Islam, pretty much. So yeah, you'll hear that, and that's what you'll.
Truth. This is the 2 elements I see missing. They're here for the sake of some kind of exchange, if that can drive them away from the true reality without engaging with our discussions. So I hope our audience have really persisted on somehow leaving to their last breath of patience in continuing listening. And those of you who've done, well done to you. You've passed your test of patience, at least listening to this conversation for such a long time. Consider this to be a very compliment from all of us, that you have really learned to be patient in engaging in discussion like this, even though the discussion may not have been as much as you wished proceeding. But one thing for sure, we have discussed about a lot of these things, all of these possibilities they bring forward. And you will see, alhamdulillah for Islam, that we can analyze, break down, and show the absurdity or validity of any of these positions with reason and intellect, and which one makes sense or not. Eventually, we would have come to a position, to his option, that the universe is always there, the cosmos is always there, and we would have demonstrated that the thing that was always there had to be necessary, not contingent. So those of you who don't know what these are, highly recommend to go and learn from Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, and Brother Muris and various others, in which they've explained the contingency argument. It's a very, very powerful argument. Even the atheists are rocking about it. I mean, they cannot simply ignore it. So we would have demonstrated a position in which, if somebody takes the universe is always there, it would be necessary, and it would not be contingent. And being necessary, it has to be absolute. It has to be property possessing.
Yeah, in the contingency argument and so on, all by necessary we mean it must exist in all possible worlds. And by contingent, we mean it doesn't have to exist in all possible worlds, right? To say that the universe is eternal doesn't mean the same thing as it's necessary, right? It could very well be that this universe on this possible world is eternal, but it's not necessarily the case that it has to exist. An eternal universe has to exist in all possible worlds. And in the same for God, it could very well be there's an eternal God, but that's not synonymous with it being a necessary God that must exist on all possible worlds, right? And Philip Leon has made this argument.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yes.
I think I've privately sent a paper to you guys on our private chats by Philip Leon talking about that there's a difference between eternal and necessary.
Independent and necessary.
Yeah, exactly. You can have, as Ugbav said, difference between contingent dependent and necessary dependent. You can. It could very well be that which is necessary, something can be dependent and necessary at the same time. Yeah, and people don't really understand that in the sense that if the first, let's say that there's a first cause or that's necessary, then the following causes must be necessary as well. But it's also dependent, because in the sense that had the first cause been different, then the rest of the remaining causes would be different, etc. So it's dependent on the first cause. Yeah, so it's dependent in the sense that because of A, B has occurred. So B is dependent upon A. A is necessary. If A is necessary, then
B is necessary as well. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's also dependent. So these words can be separated. They're not entailed by one or the other, right? So yeah, and like I said, eternal, something being eternal does not necessarily mean it's necessary in terms of necessary existence, and something being non-eternal doesn't mean it is not necessary and just merely contingent. Again, all contingent means that it's not the case on every single world, right? Every single possible world. We can think of a logically possible world where it didn't exist. It could fail to have existed. And all by necessary, we mean it couldn't have failed to exist in all possible worlds. It could very well be that God is, let's say there is a God and God had to create this universe and it's eternal. It could very well be that God could fail to exist it doesn't have to exist in all possible worlds. There could have been another world where God didn't exist. So in order to make the case that it's necessary, they have to show that God couldn't have failed to exist in all possible worlds. But I don't think they actually make that point properly.
Yeah,
so
one of the most
go on, sorry.
is Richard Swinburne himself argues that God is a contingent independent being, that he is uncaused, but he's a contingent independent, that he exists in some possible world, but he's uncaused. Nothing causes him. And I have linked the paper in the private chat. He also has a lecture, I think it's Biola University. He has a 1-hour lecture about what kind of necessary being could God be. Yeah, this one.
Yeah. And there's also lots of papers by Philip Leon talking about this in depth, and so on. So I know Mansur is saying, we've got a lot, but has Mansur even engaged with these things? What is Mansur's background? He sounds actually well spoken in terms of his English, but he doesn't seem to know the arguments properly. So he seems to be fluent. He's good at talking. I would like to know what's his education, because is he like, I don't know, does he have a background in philosophy? Because I'd be surprised.
So among these guys, these Dawa guys, I only know about Subur's educational qualification. I think he has a master's in philosophy, and philosophy of probably biology,
philosophy of biology,
right?
Philosophy of biology, I think.
Right. And one more guy, probably Imran is a doctor, I think, right? And Hashim is probably an engineer, maybe. That's what I remember, but I could be wrong here. And that's about it. I don't have any idea about what Mansur's background is. The only thing I know about him is he's your fellow ancestral, countryman, pretty much, Bangladeshi. Madan.
Mansur looks like it. Yeah. Looks like he's Bangladeshi.
Mansur is Bangladeshi. I mean, originally Bangladeshi, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I was gonna suggest if you could speak some Bangla, maybe attend his Bangla stream, right? One of those days, one of these days, pretty much.
I don't think I can articulate my thoughts in Bangla, to be honest. It'll just be really bad.
Can you speak up a bit, Bangla? Not much.
I can speak it. When talking about these concepts, it's hard enough in English, let alone in language I grasp in a tertiary standard,
Right.
third rate level. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I agree. All right, let's play this to finish and maybe close the stream. Any thoughts anybody has on this? Kelly.
No, I think go ahead and
Yeah,
end
I
it.
would
I'll
say
just
that
finish.
as
Probably
initial,
one more minute of their talk is remaining. I just wanted to show exactly what I mean, with what they thought of the whole conversation, and then how they slowly suggested, not slowly, but very explicitly suggested their audience not to go and listen to. See, and this is the point that I wanted to make basically, and just stand out this point basically, that if you think you have got the truth and you are so absolutely sure about it, you should be able to face any damn guy, whether it be with philosophy or anything. You have got the truth, mate. You don't have to be scared of anything, right? And now the same guys are telling their audience not to go and see their streams because they'll be swayed and all those things. Shows that how insecure they are within their own belief system, pretty much, right? Maybe at least they are sure of themselves, but not so sure of the other guys. But then then that's kind of the failure of that belief system, in a sense, that it can't provide that security, that backing, at least what do you call a rational backing to their followers.
And out of these property possessing will be existence, will or volition, ability or power, and also knowledge. Okay, these are the four essential things that you can get even by using our reason and intellect. And if that isn't an agent which is personal, someone who exists with no beginning, with will things to happen, has the ability and the knowledge, he's already there accepting the basic concept of our creator, which we affirm. That's what we affirm. Our God, our creator, originator, is always there without a beginning, is someone who wills the universe into existence, has the ability to bring the universe into existence and done so, and has the knowledge to rearrange this universe as it is. That is already a reasonable step to theism. That would not be a non-existent thing. It's already an originator. Okay, you don't want to call it God, but you're calling an originator. So that is theism already established. Okay, so this is what Brother Muris would have done, but of course it was going in circles, so we couldn't have.
Yeah, I just want to state just a couple things. The first thing
is that a theism, or is that just a pure deism?
before that, I would like to say that he added two more attributes, like the attribute of omnipotence and omniscience. Where did that come from?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you just willy-nilly add attributes without demonstrating that you know why. And yeah.
Did he say all knowledge, or did he say knowledge? He has to be knowledgeable.
I mean, he meant that. He obviously meant that in that sense. He said that it's like you have to accept our conception of God. It is our conception of God.
I mean, yeah, I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how they got to all knowledge, or all powerfulness. That's not necessary either. That's very weird. It's a very weird. As you guys know, it's called a gap problem, and I don't know how you can get that. And he just snuck that in at the end when you left. Like the sucker punched you,
Right.
Yeah. They made it out like you accepted that there's a will or a volition, but you didn't, right? I didn't see anything.
No, I didn't. I mean, yeah, I think the last 2 minutes that Mansur gave me to finish the talk, and I just said that, okay, I mean, I didn't put those contingency or infinite regress points, because I said if I did that, the conversation is going to prolong for another half an hour or 45 minutes, right? So I said, okay, no, not to mention that. And instead I just exchanged pleasantries, saying that I didn't mean to disrespect any one of those guys, and I hope I was able to do that, and they agreed basically. That the only thing that I didn't agree was their arguments, pretty much, right? Their line of thought, pretty much. I didn't agree to that, right? Anyway, just finish this slide.
Usually when you engage with people like this, they turn into what I like to call a possibillion. everything is a possibility. They don't pick a position. You're just straw manning absolutely everything when truly we're just trying to understand what your understanding is. That's it. And then we can work with you to massage and find a common ground. The second thing that I want to mention is the reason why I asked him, what have you learned from doing all this thing? Just one thing. And if you guys pay attention to his response was incredibly selfish. He said, oh, it was my own thing that I wanted to basically reinforce my way of thinking and my style. So you're going to tell me that you just came to a Muslim platform as a guest and didn't say, oh, wow, you know what? Now I understand why you guys think the way that you think. And it makes sense in this way. And I learned this about you guys. And then now I'm going to go back and reflect on how, you know, I can find certain things to be, to have common ground with certain things. And then other things that I need to take time to conduct more research. And I hope that you guys caught that stuff, because this is a tall tale sign of, hey, I'm not here to be sincere at all. I'm literally here to try to just argue for the sake of arguing. And it's just silly, dude. No one is here for that. We genuinely want better for absolutely everybody that we engage with. And we feel and believe and know that we're upon truth. And we want to share that truth with whoever the guest is. So drop your walls, talk to us like a human being. We're not here to beat you up, and be sincere with yourself and those around you. I mean, I can't believe the guy, you know, he's got his own thing going on, but just refused an opportunity to meet like-minded people and continue a future conversation.
All right,
It seems that he literally contradicted himself. His comments about the honesty of intention, especially if it's coming from people like them, because they are the same people who go from people to people, taking mic, filming them, and poking them with questions and forcing them to with the intention of making them accept Islam. So they also do not have the intention of truth seeking.
Exactly. None of them have the intention of changing their minds, thinking about, okay, so when I've discussed, when I've read it, so did he agree? Did Muris actually himself say anything like, okay, so I've had this discussion with Philo, and okay, so now I understand what Philo was trying to say, and I'm going to look and research into it. Did he say that?
Exactly.
No, never. They won't ever do that. That's the problem, and exactly that's the point I'm trying to make. That's why I ran these 2, 3, 4 minutes that I ran towards the end, because this is the most important part. They are thinking that I should go to their stream and I should adapt to their ways, think through their ways, why they are right and all those things. And they don't have to do that, basically, right? And that's the point I was trying to make. Basically, he thinks in
So
his
it was
eyes,
like either pages
he's
or accept
absolutely
Islam.
right. And then all those things, that sincerity and all those, just you realize that over here, pretty much, right?
Let me just quickly say something on this, though. He's called you selfish, but he doesn't have. You don't owe him, and you're not entitled to simply understand the way a new and novel way of thinking, if he doesn't provide that, right? In principle, in theory, of course, you admitted that indeed you will go then if there is something to be learned, if there's some new novel insight, if there's some groundbreaking, earth-shattering argument that you've never heard before. Yes, in principle. And he also, in principle, subscribes to that. But if it doesn't happen, why would you admit it and acknowledge it? It doesn't make you selfish. It just means you've not heard something that has been ground-shattering for your views. So when you say, I just came here just to read, whatever, I don't know exactly, I didn't pick up exactly what you said. According to them, that you said something like that. I just came here, just to whatever. But that's because they probably did not provide you anything novel or new. So basically what they're trying to say, that the mere fact that you didn't go, oh, sir, thank you very much, I learned a lot from you right now, means that you were closed-minded or selfish. No, you could have been open-minded. It's completely, there's no contradiction. You're open-minded, you come along, you're open to find a new thing, you don't find a new thing, and that's why you don't change. That's something, and they're doing the same thing. So are they closed-minded? Are they selfish? Have they learned something new? And if they have, then good. If they haven't, if they've gone through this story before, and they sound like it, like people like Muris is saying, this is really predictable. I've talked to people like this. Then he's also not learned something. So that's only based on the strength of the interlocutor. And if Mansur, Hashim, and this other guy with the hat, well, both of them are wearing hats, weren't very convincing, and they have not said anything new, why would we be so impressed? I mean, Philo has me, Philo has Uqba, and we delve into the deep depths of philosophy far more than these guys. So obviously Philo has himself. He's an intelligent guy. Why would he need to be taught by Mansur, right? He may not have heard something new. So that's their own problem, right? And if they're trying to say that it's not, it's just Philo's problem, then what evidence do they have to show that it really was just Philo gone in there, got caught out, and didn't admit any mistakes or anything like that? Nothing like that happened. So why is they assuming this bad motivation?
Right, Madin, there were a few agreements where there were points of agreements. We did agree, right? Okay, certain things they were mentioned, and I said, okay, let's agree to those points, right? Some of the points they meant universe from the thing, and we said, okay, let's assume that that's the case, even though we discussed at length today that it's still possible that those things are beyond us, and we can still say that, we discussed these things. So it's not that we completely were at loggerheads, but I mean, your primary responses didn't appeal to me, and that's why I said towards the end I pointed to them that your primary responses weren't good enough, and I pointed out the reasons why they were not good enough, and that's why I mentioned all those things. So that probably worked them up pretty much, right? And when I mentioned that I went over there, maybe they would learn something from me, or I would learn something from them. And then Muris asked a question: what have you learned by going to all these streams? I mentioned that I go to streams, other streams as well. And then I mentioned that, okay, I learned something about my own, where I want to place my morality and all those things, and maybe I'm learning a thing or two about it. And that's probably was the response to his thing, that he just kind of got worked up about, not worked up about, but probably it frustrated him that I didn't say anything about that. This conversation taught me something, that, oh, okay, there must be a first cause, and it has to be a creator. That's the first step, right? Had I agreed to that, he would have been happier probably, but I didn't say that, and because we couldn't reach to that point pretty much, right? And so yeah.
The other thing is that he mentioned something like these type of guys, they never commit to a position. They think they're all possible or something like that. And this is so intellectually brain dead, if not dishonest. I don't know which one it is, right? He is completely watering down, diluting the very frontier of cosmology right now, which is in this kind of non-committal status, in this flux. Yeah, there's cosmological scientists who just don't know what's going on, which model is correct. It's hard to empirically test. It's hard to do things. The reality is the field has some direction, of course. I'm not saying nothing is known, but there are a multitude of possibilities that cosmologists will tell you. Experts who have got their PhDs, who studied and know these things, the origins of the universe, far more than all of us here, and they will tell you we're not making it up. They would tell you that the beginnings of the universe are the least well-known aspect of our reality, and it's still developing. So the fact that these models that we can't commit to one thing or another is simply because of the dearth of knowledge. This is not my opinion. I didn't make it up. It's being told up to us by experts, and if anything, these people here are pretending to know certainty where certainty is not warranted. Yeah, are acting highly arrogant to think that they can just dismiss one possibility or another through the kind of armchair shenanigans in their brain.
Right, Martin, can I interrupt you for a second? And this is exactly the point you made right now. Exactly the point why I wanted our cosmologist friend to be here for today's stream, right? And then he would have told them, okay, I'm a cosmologist. I have a PhD in cosmology. Let's talk about it. Let's maybe if we get a chance, we'll ask him.
We'll do it again. Yeah, we'll do it again. But he's also had bad experiences to the extent that he was once in a taxi and the guy was defending Hamza Zors's model of whatever, cosmological argument, and compared to
right.
And he was trying to say, actually, no, the evidence suggests this and that and that. And the taxi driver was literally telling him that he needs to look up Hamza Zorsis and learn cosmology from Hamza Zorsis. So and my professor said, I am a PhD student. I have professors surrounding me who agree with me, and I teach students. I teach newcomers about this area. He goes, oh, that's all good, but talk to Hamza. He'll tell you. It's like they don't care. They don't care about expertise. It's just that if there is somebody who sides with their view, they'll just go with that, and that's how it works. Yeah.
All right. I think we're done with that review, but it was good. I think it was good. I mean, had we had that cosmologist friend, I don't know. I think we'll call him Zahir Abbas and this is not a real name. It just occurred to me that name, so I just took that name. But he's a cosmologist, and if we can get him, he has been to our stream sometime, maybe not, but he'll be here, and you'll know when he comes back that whether he had been to our stream or not. All right, Kelly, Upa, anything you want to add? Maybe we should close the stream, right?
Yeah, I think we should. We have a lot to say today, so I think we should close it now.
Justice says, sorry, the number counted will be the one we can't conceive. Well, no, what I'm trying to, if you're still there, Justice, all I'm trying to say is that if there's an infinite number of opportunities for numbers to be counted, and somebody is existing eternally into the future, infinitely into the future, it won't simply be a potential infinite. Each number would be counted. You know, so if a person is counting infinitely into the future, then it'll be a contradiction to say that he will only count a finite number of numbers, because that's not infinitely into the future, then, is it? An infinite number into the future is saying that obviously you can't complete an infinity, but you are pretty much never-ending counting. You're counting forever without a stoppage, and the idea is that because you can't reach the end, it'll always be a potential, right? But
yes,
sorry,
man. Will complete your thought.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. It'll always just be a potential. So there'll never be a point where you've completed the infinity. You won't reach a last number. Well, of course not. You will not reach a last number. But you can't think of it in present terms. So if you can keep counting up the number series, obviously, if you stop at any one point, there would be a finite number of numbers counted, and there'll be a potential future. But if you don't stop, the question is, if you don't stop, yeah, how many numbers would you have counted if you don't stop at any one point? Well, it'll be in an infinite. It'll be all of them. There won't be a point where you finish. It's just that there will be a one-to-one correlation between you saying the number and that particular number, those moments, right? All the moments. So if you imagine for every second you're counting a number, then if you go infinite into the future, there'll be an infinite number of seconds, and for each second you've counted each number, right? What we're not saying is that there'll be a point where you go, eureka, I finished. It just means if it goes never ending into the future,
it's a continuous process. It's a continuous process, right?
And for every number, there would be you counting it. Yeah, because if you continue to go into the future to see if you finished, you won't find it. And if you keep going, you'll just still see the person is counting. But in principle, that means it just continuously has been counting, and that is an infinite. In other words, that is the infinite. And if we do think about it like that, then every number is counted.
All right, Kelly, you wanted to add something?
What I was about to say is that if this person is a theist, I'm just going to give you an example or just a way of conceiving what Mahadan is saying if he's a theist. Just imagine, according to your conception, I believe God is all-knowing and he can see everything, past, present, and future at the same time. So essentially, God being the ultimate reality is a timeless reality. So whatever exists, even within time, on the level of ultimate reality, everything has already happened, right? So God, just imagine God looking at our lives. So according to the Islamic theology or many others, human beings are going to live for an eternity, at least their souls will, in the afterlife. So from the point of view of God, the entire human life is there in front of him. And that entire infinite life of a human is there in front of him, right there in front of him at that moment, right? He knows it's there always in front of him, which means it exists at, therefore, an infinite moment which you said never arrives. In front of God, it is there, according to your conception. If that person is a theist, I think he can conceive it in that way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it as well. If you imagine heaven, then God will know every moment in heaven into the future, and the future is never ending. So he will be looking at every single moment, and that's just one continuous chain. He'll just be looking at all of it continuously. That's it, and that's an infinite. I don't see any contradictions with that. Yeah,
That's a brilliant argument, Khali. Kudos.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
All right, Ugba.
Actually,
closing remarks.
I just thought of it from an argument that Mufti Wajidi was giving to explain probably, I'm not sure what, but he said it in that. And I'm like, okay, now I thought of it in a similar way, but against a theistic argument.
All
I
right.
think it's pretty interesting, since I think in his debate with Fraser and his debate with Hijab and Hamza
Yeah.
use a similar sort of argument.
Aaron Fraser
with
also
God's
used
knowledge
that,
of
yes,
infinity.
about the knowledge of God, exactly.
Ji. Yeah. So my
All right,
ending
Ugba.
remarks would be that, yeah, I think we did pretty well today. And my advice to people like Mansur would be that they should come out of this Dunning-Kruger effect, and instead of advising others to reflect, they should themselves book up a philosophy textbook or look up some terms. That's it.
All right. I think Dunning-Kruger at its peak, pretty much, right? At its height. Yeah, I think yeah, it was a good stream. Kali, Adin, any last remarks, closing remarks?
No, it's good. Kylie, I'd be borrowing that example of the God looking at in an infinite heaven. I think it's probably more easier to understand than Wes Morrison's and Alex Malpass's example.
It's a bit easier to explain to a theist or a Muslim.
Yeah, theist as well. Yeah.
Right.
Other than that,
I think
I probably need to go myself. So let's wrap it up.
all right. Let's just close it. Right. Before we close, as a ritual, please like, subscribe, and share our stream. Our channel. Press the notification bell, and all you can do after the stream, comment, and all you can do to spread our channel. And that's about it for today. Wherever you are, good day, good night, good evening. Bye bye.